There's nothing wrong with changing your opinion, especially when it comes to silly little creatures like Pokemon. I never felt better for hating a Pokemon. It didn't improve my life in any way, considering that the more I learn about a Pokemon, the less I dislike it. So in order to bring you closer to Arceus, I'm gonna count down the Pokemon whom my opinion of has changed the most. Whether that be through experience, through knowledge, or simply because I fell in love with them for who they are. I used to be ignorant and uninformed about these Pokemon, and now I'm still ignorant and uninformed, but not about these Pokemon. Make sure to leave a like if you want to see more of these opinion-based essay videos, and subscribe if you want to see more. Now let's begin with number 25. Delphox. You know me, I like hot foxes, but for the life of me, I could never get behind Delphox. Until I did. That's kind of the concept of this video. But even till this day, it's my least favorite starter final evolution. That's why it's low on this list, because my opinion didn't change too much. I found its witch aspects awkwardly tacked on. I mean, Braixen's tail looks like a broom with a stick, while Delphox's twig comes out of her arm. Until this day, that flame-shaped ear hair kind of messes up the silhouette. This is exacerbated in the 3D era, where Delphox just stands there instead of hitting a cool wizard pose. I've seen many redesigns that I love, but I guess Delphox rarely lived up to its full potential. But here's where things really changed for me and old Delphox over here. Last year, I played a playthrough of Pokemon X before Legends ZA came out, so I can, give the brain a little refresher of what Kalos is like. I decided I would only play with a full team of Pokemon that I don't like. Pokemon that at some point were in my bottom 100 Pokemon. And let me tell you what, pretty much my entire team will be on this list. In this playthrough, I got to witness how maternal Delphox felt, especially as the matriarch of my family. My team, now it's my family, I guess. The design always felt too anthropomorphic to me, but now I see it as a strength, because Delphox feels like a caring yet powerful partner. In battle, I got to witness how Delphox kept her wand in her sleeve, and eventually when Mega Delphox was revealed, it was finally over and cemented this Pokemon as one that I no longer dislike, because that Mega slaps! This is kind of the vibe I wanted to see from the beginning. It made me realize that I was interpreting Delphox as an awkward witch, when I should have been seeing this Pokemon as a wise wizard instead. Number 24. Flamigo. I'll be real, when Flamigo was revealed, I was not impressed. I thought it was way too simple looking, especially compared to all the flamboyant Flamingo Pokemon concept that fans have been cooking for years. With fire plumes and flamenco vibes, and then Game Freak just drops a Flamingo, and it doesn't even have a humorous personality like Toucannon. It looks even less sentient than a real Flamingo, honestly, but over time, that simplicity is actually what flipped me. Flamigo stands out because it is unassuming. The idea that a lawn Flamingo could suddenly jump you as part of a perfectly synchronized flock, that's hilarious. And the fact that it literally ties its own neck in a knot so its power doesn't leak out is absurd, in the good way of using that word. It also helps that I'm a sucker for 80s aesthetics, and flamingos are basically an unofficial mascot of that whole vibe. But the real turning point was seeing a piece by my friend Vergoliphus. It made me realize just how elegant the shapes in Flamigo's design actually are. The clean curves, strong silhouette, and it's all super striking. It was the first time that I wanted to hang up a piece of art of a Pokemon that I didn't like. And just to be clear, no, I don't secretly think that it looks like a boxing glove. I'd still prefer a different Flamingo design, that's why it's low on this list. But this video is very much me learning how to appreciate Pokemon for what they are. Number 23. Impidimp. Impidimp used to really bug me. When it first showed up, it didn't feel like it matched Pokemon's art style at all. It was too humanoid, too cartoony, and honestly, it didn't feel like an animal that could naturally exist in the Pokemon world. It felt more like a weird little mascot or gremlin that wandered in from a different franchise. I just couldn't picture it living in a tall grass next to Squavit. What changed for me really was the evolutionary line. Seeing the grand picture, basically. I absolutely adore Grimmsnarl, and seeing where Impidimp ends up made the whole progression click. Looking back, Impidimp is very clearly meant to be an imp or changeling, something uncanny and irritating that is supposed to stand out. It's not trying to be cute in a traditional way, it's trying to be obnoxious. I mean, its tongue is literally, sticking out. I don't know how I didn't understand that earlier. And yeah, changelings are meant to resemble humans, so that humanoid vibe I didn't like at first actually is kind of the point. It also helps that Impidimp is so cute in the overworld. Watching it scurry around like a little menace was eye-opening. Oh snap, he stole my shoe! My Vessi shoes from today's sponsor, Vessi. I'm kidding, this channel is new. No, we don't have any sponsors yet. The point is, I'm learning that uniqueness is a good thing. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more we need these cute little critters that run around in Pokemon. Number 22. Maushold. It felt too simple. At this point, you're probably noticing a pattern with me. The coloration was minimal, the features were barely there, and as an evolution, it didn't really feel like one. It just felt like Tandemaus again, and that really grinds my gears. That's why Klinkling isn't on this list, because I still don't like it. But as I learned that it's supposed to feel like a set of dolls, the whole design made more sense. The simplicity isn't laziness, and it leans hard into the toy-like storybook aesthetic. God forbid a Pokemon have a little whimsy, right? And honestly, their open mouths give them way more personality. The babies are adorable, and the parents constantly looking stressed in the various Maushold memes that I saw made me feel sorry for these two. It feels weirdly relatable for a family of mice who can absolutely ruin your day by hitting you 10 times in one turn. That's enough population bomb! Sorry. Number 21, Blipbug. Its head is weird. I don't think a head is supposed to be that vertical. I just thought it had zero personality. It just looked like a stretched out bug consisting of super simple shapes that made it feel like it was a toy and not an actual creature. If you told me it was a placeholder model, I probably would have believed you. But I'm the biggest Orbeetle fan this side of the Mississippi. Loxton's on the other side of the Mississippi, so he's the biggest fan there. So I realized that this thing is supposed to be an egg-headed nerd. It's a little bug baby with a massive brain, and suddenly that awkward shape makes sense. And to top it all off, it actually looks like a ladybug larva. They clearly turned those bristles into unkept hair. It's named after the blips on a radar, which perfectly sets up the progression of this evolutionary line so that it can evolve into a full-on mad scientist with radar powers. The line tells a story, and Blipbug is a necessary, slightly goofy first chapter of this story. Number 20, Dracovish. Dracovish is one I'll fully admit that I jumped the gun on. I understood the idea behind this Galarian fossil being mismatched and revived, but even knowing the concept, Dracovish just felt like too much of a mess for me to engage with. It looked overly complicated, visually noisy, and honestly kind of miserable. What endeared me to Dracovish was seeing it actually exist in the world, especially in the anime. Watching it run around and clearly having a great time with that ridiculous voice, it reframed the whole Pokemon to me from a tragic accident to a chaotic little freak who's thriving despite everything. On top of that, I'm just as entertained as everybody else about how absurdly powerful it is. Imagine explaining to someone who doesn't know Pokemon that your favorite Pokemon is a fish on a dinosaur butt, all because it's really good in battle. At the end of the day, I respect that Gen 8 actually did something new with the fossils, and it did it in a way that's informed by real-world history, so that's cool. Number 19, Stonjourner. Stonehenge is a huge deal, culturally and visually. So in my mind, that meant that this thing should have been really epic, maybe legendary. Instead, what we got felt almost mundane. It was just living Stonehenge. For something based on one of the most famous landmarks on Earth, it felt underwhelming. That changed the moment I saw it walk around in Scarlet and Violet, seeing Stonjourner wander the world and eventually gather with others in its group, like Stonehenge, made the concept extremely wholesome. The way it sleeps by stacking its body parts on top of each other like a stone wall is genuinely brilliant. The runes on those legs looking like shoelaces, the stones on top looking like a little hat. That's clever design language, not just rocks glued together. And then there's that damn smile. That little smirk. This Pokemon knows exactly what it's doing. Look at that dance. Sheesh. Number 18, Jumpluff. Remember when Game Freak made Pokemon without any dramatic concepts like Jumpluff? It's just a round creature with dandelions stuck to it. There were a lot of round things with things on top of them back then. As a final evolution, it felt too cute, almost anticlimactic. And on top of that, I couldn't imagine it being useful in battle. To be fair, a lot of Johto Pokemon are kind of struggle in that department. What changed was a little age and actually using one in a Johto flying monotype playthrough that I just played through. And suddenly this Pokemon that I dismissed as filler was doing real work. It ended up tanking electric moves for the party and became an MVP on the team. Outside of battle, I've just grown to appreciate how pleasant Jumpluff is to look at. I want to see more art of it just drifting through the air. As a kid, I didn't really value that kind of vibe, but nowadays going on walks is a huge part of my personality, and Jumpluff feels like the exact kind of Pokemon that I imagine seeing out in the wild during one of those unforgettable sunset walks. Number 17, Meowstic. Here's the thing, I think Esper is my favorite non-evolved Pokemon. It's definitely up there with Joltik and Wooper and Bounsweet. I mean, I have plushes of those three, but not Esper, so I could be lying to you. But trust me, that's a great cat right there. So naturally, I'm not gonna enjoy the evolution that much, because I prefer Esper. Meowstic is just a French cat, and I don't really like the French that much, and I'm more of a dog person. But now I'm a true Meowstic believer. You know how many people can't shut up about their cats? Well, after owning one in Legends ZA, I can't shut up about mine. I had the male one, because I think the male Meowstic is extremely extremely handsome. That's a good looking cat. But what solidified my love is Mega Meowstic, my absolute favorite Mega from Gen 9. The Harlequin god aesthetic it has is the perfect way to fuse male and female. I'd assume this is what it feels like to be non-binary. Number 16, Celesteela. There was a short stint where Celesteela was my least favorite Ultra Beast. If you know me, you'd know that I'm afraid of giant, complicated and odd-shaped vessels. It's a kind of megalophobia that I have where I get super anxious near huge ships that look unconventional. I can't even show you examples because I'm kind of afraid to, Google them. Celesteela felt like that at the time, the most complicated Pokemon, so I was not down for its design. But that was stupid. I was stupid. It's an Ultra Beast. It's supposed to look unlike any Pokemon. It's an alien. It's good that I feared it. And once I learned that it's based on Princess Kaguya and incorporates so much of this Japanese folk story by genuinely fusing an alien princess, the bamboo she was found in, and the rocket that she went back home with, I began to notice how pretty this is. Like, she's actually quite cute. That's also part of the concept. This scary object is actually a sentient princess, and not to mention, it technically has the most shades of green out of any Pokemon, and I am True Green Oh. I forgot. I'm not True Green 7 here. Then what am I? Number 15, Furfrou. I mean, the concept of a customizable poodle Pokemon is neat. I never disliked this Pokemon, I just thought it was boring and not really the kind of gimmick that I would indulge in. But then I lost my entire team to a battle against a fluffy Furfrou in Alola. I never knew this Pokemon was so tough, but then I thought, okay, maybe that was a fluke. But then I replayed X a few years back and I struggled against another Furfrou. And even more recently in Legends ZA, I was appalled by how aggressive Furfrou were in the wild zones. The idea that one of, if not the least fantastical Pokemon in existence is super strong without any particularly broken attributes is wild to me. It simply made this Pokemon way more interesting. Number 14, Inteleon. James Pond over here was slowly becoming my least favorite starter Pokemon evolution, but that was a few years back. Like most people, I found it to be slightly disappointing Sobble evolution, but more specifically, I hated its proportions. It was too skinny and upright. I liked the spy angle and all the various gadgets its design incorporates, but it was far from the execution that I wanted Game Freak to implement. But then they gave him a gun, and I was all in, baby. It's hilarious seeing a Pokemon up on a sniper tower and literally shooting other Pokemon. And then in the anime, they leaned into Inteleon's suaveness, and honestly, I've always loved Snipe Shot. While the design wasn't perfect, every other aspect of this Pokemon was great. They went all out, and the more you get used to it, the less the expectations matter. So I'll give Inteleon a shot. Number 13, Mega Golisopod. This is the story of the quickest I've ever changed my opinion on a design. Don't get it twisted, Golisopod is one of my favorite Pokemon ever. Here's the figure to prove it. Can't go wrong with the Goliath Isopod. But the Mega was extremely disappointing to me. The color scheme was simply worse and kind of muddied the silhouette by taking out all the contrast. The cyborg concept felt out of nowhere when we were all expecting a super samurai, and in game it felt incredibly stiff. It just didn't work in 3D because it was too hard to understand what you're looking at, especially in the real-time battles of ZA where you can't stand for a minute and decipher what its design is. But then the 2D official key art was revealed and I immediately got it. The pose they chose was one of the most dynamic in all of Pokemon. The shading is spectacular and the silhouette is masterfully done. It went from confusing to badass, so I'm finally proud that my boy got a Mega this good. Number 12, Tatsugiri. Here's the deal. I think Gen 9 was simply pushing the boundaries of Pokemon designs, so it took me a minute to warm up to some of these fellows. One such instance was Tatsugiri. I got it from the beginning. It's a tiny dragon that looks like sushi. I simply wasn't convinced because the eyes looked like simple cartoon eyes that were stuck on a drawing of a sushi. It felt like something a kid could model in 15 minutes. But I get the hype now. First, it's super adorable. If a Pokemon makes me feel some kind of emotion, it's entertaining in some way, and therefore valid in its existence. The idea that they're very tiny, super intelligent, and sly little dragons is also fairly amusing. And finally, the throat sac inflating so it mimics food and then gets eaten up and then controls a Dondozo is pretty genius. That's a good idea, and the design fleshes that out really well. Number 11. Electrode may be contender for laziest evolution. It's Voltorb upside down with less detail. It's the Pokemon with the simplest silhouette, and it's not really clever. Obviously it's a mimic, so I'm not going to hate it for looking like a Pokeball, but something like a Fungus is what I'd expect to see if I were to pay someone to design a Pokeball mimic. But then I realized dude is charismatic as hell and looks like a smiling bearded bald guy. Like I'd want to be friends with this guy. I think the Electrode Ditto plush cemented my fondness for this Pokemon. It's such a charming and near perfect plush that makes my day better when I see it. So of course it's going to be on this list. Number 10. Steelix. This one's more of a story of me letting go of my repressed feelings, because for most of my childhood, I would tell other fans that I hated Steelix, because it looked scary with its mismatched teeth, out-of-place chin, and menacing size. It looked like the #1 Pokemon that I would freak out if it suddenly popped out of the ground and revealed its existence to humans. But in reality, deep down, I kinda thought it was cool just like everybody else. Now that I'm over this fear, I can just appreciate its fantastic design, although it's kind of the one on the list that I actually liked less after using it. In my X playthrough where I play with all the Pokemon that I don't like, it was kind of disappointing how little I used my Steelix because its move pool sucked. But once again, that's Gen 2 Pokemon for you, especially Pokemon that evolve through trade. Number 9. The Forces of Nature. I don't know why I forgot to say it when I was recording. Just like everybody else, when Gen 5 rolled around, I thought men in clouds was kind of a thing I didn't want to see. But that was basically half my life ago. Ever since, I've become obsessed with Japanese culture and media, and understanding the Kamis, Raijin, Fujin, and Inari that inspired these designs, as well as their fun Therian forms, kind of dissolved any animosity I had. In reality, there are plenty of buff Pokemon that we all accept. I mean, Machoke barely gets any hate, so the anthropomorphic features of these Pokemon don't seem like a problem, especially since they're legendary. Although I'm not gonna lie, their beta forms are kinda better. I don't know if that makes me love them or hate them. Number 8. Meloetta. I originally had a similar issue with Meloetta as I did with the Forces of Nature. I thought, what has Pokemon come to? A cartoon girl singing her little songs? This is practically a human if she had a nose. But then I softened my heart as I got into music and art. Wow, that rhymed. That was not intentional. I noticed all the clever music motifs in her design, like the bar with notes in her hair, quarter notes for arms, whole notes for eyes, and a headpiece that looks like a treble clef, all wrapped in a Pokemon that is generally pretty cute. They successfully made the embodiment of music in Pokemon form, but what cemented her as a Pokemon I now love is her Relic song. That is a fantastic melody that I actually teared up for when she sang it in the Blueberry Academy DLC. It was a perfect cutscene. Number 7. Garbodor. This is a perfect entry to showcase the nature of this list, because I love Meloetta more than Garbodor, of course, I'm not an idiot, but my opinion of Garbodor has changed slightly more than Meloetta. I was on board with the Trubbish hate, just like you guys, but the more I learned how to design creatures, the more I realized how well this Pokemon is designed. Most of the problem everybody has with Garbodor is actually the concept. You guys simply don't like the concept of a garbage Pokemon. But for a garbage Pokemon, this is extremely well designed and executed. This is Pocket Monster after all. Dude looks like a trash monster. Has colors that reflect its semi-artificial nature, or how the ripped garbage bag face with rebar and tube arms are a perfect progression from Trubbish. But honestly, convincing anybody that what they see as garbage is actually treasure is a waste of time. Number 6. Arceus. We're following up garbage with God. I used to think that Arceus was too normal and underwhelming to truly feel like the god of Pokemon. Shouldn't the alpha Pokemon be peak in every way? Its name is confusing, its design is confusing, its lore is confusing. But then I realized, yeah, it's the same case with the Abrahamic God as well. Many dislike God and find God's nature and origin confusing, and the fact that there isn't even a consensus as to what name God should be called makes the whole Arceus versus Arceus debate feel very appropriate. I'm not gonna lie, if I were to design a God Pokemon, honestly, it wouldn't be too far off from how Arceus looks like, and the fact that this is technically not its real appearance makes it all the more fun. Number 5. Toucannon. We follow up God with a bird. I mean, I was pretty mad with Toucannon the first time I saw the design. I genuinely thought that it looked too much like a toucan to be creative. I was incredibly wrong though. That's what this video is about again. The thing is, starting from Generation 7, many Pokemon had to be witnessed in-game to fully understand the extent of their design. The way Toucannon's beak heats up like a meter so that it can warm up its nest and then shoot out seeds like a cannon is just as good as the concept of any Pokemon you probably love. But the fact that this festively colored bird always looks super angry is also an amusing and clever juxtaposition. So I'd take a Pokemon like this any day. Number 4. Claydol. For a long time, I was vocal about how Claydol was among my top 10 least favorite Pokemon, but honestly, that was all down to how uncomfortable it made me. Not how good of a Pokemon it was. It just looked very creepy, and its color scheme made it even scarier. I mean, the fear I had of it was similar to my arachnophobia. Like a spider, it just has too many body parts and an intimidating pattern, but now that I'm not afraid of it as much, all that is left is a Pokemon with an interesting design, lore, and origin. It feels ancient and alien, and honestly, many of the coolest Pokemon share these traits. It's a regular Pokemon, but feels important to the Pokemon world. It's mysterious, and I'm always super awake when I encounter it. It's like a sleep paralysis demon, and that's a good thing. The older I get, the more I appreciate media that makes me feel emotions, because as a jaded adult, that's basically why I consume media. to feel things again. That hint of fear that I get when I see it is exciting. Okay, I'm getting into too much detail, but Claydol's cool. Number 3, Vanilluxe. Now, all 3 of the following Pokemon were in my recent least favorite Pokemon run of X, and like Vanilluxe here, I have come around to liking them because of this experience. I get that an ice cream Pokemon doesn't feel like what you think Pokemon should be, but I've always loved Vanillite because it's genuinely adorable, is it not? You just don't like the idea of an ice cream Pokemon if you don't think so. I used to dislike Vanillish because of its stupid face, and Vanilluxe because it was too Vanillishes. But then I realized the ultimate truth. They aren't sentient ice cream cones, they're just living icicles. That isn't any different from the living rocks and steel monsters that we have in Pokemon. The snow on this breathing icicle looks like ice cream, and that's a good thing. That's how you design a clever ice-type Objectmon. Ice cream in the Pokemon world was inspired by this guy. You can still dislike Vanilluxe, but to say that it is a bad design and concept is kind of close-minded and irrational, and I don't even love Vanilluxe. I'm just tired of people clowning on it for reasons that are actually kind of good. It's so cute the way it gets angry when it attacks, and how the ice on its back subtly forms a smile. Face it, Vanilluxe was always a good design. Number 2, Simipour. On the other hand, I don't think this is an amazing design. I used to say that it was my second least favorite Pokemon for how unnatural it looked, but I don't know where it would place anymore. Here's the deal. Simipour is based on the concept of See No Evil from the Three Wise Monkeys mixed with the Gyaru. I thought even with its fun origin, a feminine water monkey simply looks too uncanny. Grass monkey makes sense, but water monkey? Get out of town. Sea monkeys exist, but they're not actual monkeys. But there are in fact monkeys that spend a lot of time in water, so my hatred was kind of irrational. I just didn't want a monkey to have a dress and dreadlocks, but then I used it. I put Panpour on my team, which I actually don't mind because I like Panpour, but then I evolved it. And let me tell you what, Simipour was by far the MVP. You have not lived until you've turned a Pokemon you've slandered online for nearly a decade into a trusted teammate you love. It was like having the whole enemy to friends trope play out in real life. I used to think that that chill attitude that Simipour had was mocking me, but now I get it. Simipour was chill, because it didn't have anything to worry about. I am now homies with Simipour. And number 1 is Aromatisse. For a majority of my career as a Poketuber, my least favorite Pokemon was Aromatisse. I thought that it should have been a plague doctor. I would have been fine with a flamenco, can-can, perfume bottle, masquerade bird, but I personally thought that Aromatisse didn't pull off the sass that they gave it. It felt awkward and almost uncomfortable to look at, like a child in a beauty pageant. But after maturing a bit, simply learning to appreciate things for what they are, and finally using Aromatisse on my Kalos playthrough, the spell has been broken. I don't hate Aromatisse anymore. She does in fact slay. I used to think that this blank expression was an indication of her being uncomfortable, but in reality it was a mask. It was inspired by masquerades after all. But once I saw her move, attack, and destroy all her ops, I knew she killed it. Aromatisse was a confident lady, and that's all I wanted to see from the beginning. I see the vision now. She's cute, fashionable, and full of energy. My least favorite Pokemon is now Pawmot. I hate Pawmot. Screw Pawmot. All my homies hate Pawmot. But I know if I make this video again in 10 years that Pawmot is probably going to be on this list, so leave a like if you enjoyed, and please subscribe to this new channel if you want to see how it grows and evolves. I'm so thankful for you being one of the first viewers. It means a lot. If you want to see more Pokemon opinion videos like this, you've come to the right place. Make sure to check out the other videos on the channel to get a taste of all the formats I'm trying to utilize, and I'll smell you later, my rival.